Imagine there's someone walking among us, seemingly ordinary, but inside them lies a darkness with no end. A serial killer whose actions are unpredictable, living a double life, hiding behind a mask of innocence while committing the most horrific crimes. In this story, we will uncover the secrets of this killer and dive into his disturbed mind to learn how his victims disappeared without a trace. Get ready for spine-chilling details. And remember, what you're about to hear is not for the faint of heart. Before we begin, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a moment of our thrilling stories. Today, I will talk about a serial killer who is quite rare and doesn't come around often. This serial killer committed some of the most horrific murders ever recorded in history. His name is Marcel Petiot, a man whose story is filled with mysteries and intriguing details. Even his end was more thrilling and bizarre. Stay focused and don't miss a word in this video because every detail in this man's story is crucial. Don't worry about anything else, just prepare your tea, Nescafe, coffee, and pay close attention. Let's dive in. Today's story is about Dr. Marcel Petiot, also known as André-Henri Petiot. Soldier, doctor, politician, thief, embezzler, drug dealer, and serial killer. He seemed to have left no evil act undone, and even perfected his craft in doing wrong. I've read a lot about serial killers, but this one, in particular, had a completely different behavior from the others. Marcel Petiot was born on January 17, 1897. From a young age, he was an odd child who did strange and aggressive things. For example, he would kill animals after torturing them. On one occasion, he drowned a cat, finding creative ways to harm animals. His family didn't give much importance to it at the time, thinking it was just normal child behavior. But when he entered school, even though he was very intelligent, he had a dark side, constantly thinking about diabolical acts. At the age of 11, he took his father's gun to school and fired several shots in the classroom. Fortunately, no one died, although there were some injuries. He was also caught harassing a female classmate, and at one point used a screwdriver to dismantle a mailbox, taking the letters inside and reading people's secrets. He was quickly found out and charged with theft and vandalism of public property. The authorities decided to send him to a psychiatric hospital for evaluation, where a report described him as having psychological issues and mental disorders. Consequently, all charges were dropped. Throughout his academic career, Marcel Petiot was frequently expelled due to his disruptive behavior. He barely managed to finish his studies, and after graduating in 1915, he volunteered for the French army, joining the service in early 1916. World War I was looming, and he participated in the Battle of Aisne. However, soon after the French forces began fighting, he was exposed to thick gas, leading to convulsions and fainting. When he regained consciousness, he started exhibiting nervous breakdowns and seizures, displaying increasingly bizarre behavior. His superiors in the army found him distracting and a potential liability during the war, so they decided to keep him in the barracks doing nothing but resting. But Petiot did not stay still. He began stealing supplies from his comrades: blankets, medical kits, morphine, and even food rations and personal items like wallets and photos. As a result, he was sent to a military prison in Orléans, where doctors confirmed his mental instability. He spent time in a psychiatric hospital before inexplicably returning to the military. But Petiot didn't last long. He shot himself in the foot, or in another version, used a grenade to injure himself. His commanding officer swore not to keep him in the military any longer and discharged him, granting him a pension and requesting that he never show his face again. After the war, Petiot enrolled in a program for war veterans that was strangely brief. After only 8 months, participants received a medical certificate. This allowed Petiot to become a doctor. He returned to a psychiatric hospital in Évreux, not as a patient but as a practicing physician. Soon, he became known as a skilled doctor in a town called Villeneuve-sur-Yonne, where he took large amounts of government-supplied free medicine for patients and sold it to them instead. He also stole from his patients and dealt in medical narcotics, even performing illegal abortions. In 1926, bored with minor crimes, Petiot decided to embrace a more malevolent path. He had a patient, an elderly woman, who would visit him with her daughter, Louise Delafoe. Petiot fell for Louise, who reciprocated his feelings. They started a relationship, and she became his first victim. Louise disappeared without a trace, and although neighbors reported seeing Petiot carrying a box similar to one later found containing a dismembered body, police could not gather enough evidence against him. They closed the case, deeming it a missing persons case. In 1927, Petiot ran for office in Villeneuve-sur-Yonne, using his popularity, thanks to his distribution of drugs, to win against an opponent who tried to dissuade the public from voting for him. Petiot's supporters disrupted his rival's campaign speech, leading to a victory for Petiot. After winning, he embezzled public funds. 2 or 3 years later, many complaints were filed against him for theft, fraud, and suspicious activities. Consequently, he was dismissed from office. The public, however, adored him and protested until he was reinstated. But this time in a different capacity, as an advisor in another town called Yonne Department. Yet, he continued his criminal activities, even stealing the town's electricity equipment, leading to his final dismissal. Leaving the town behind, he moved to Paris, where he began to contemplate other diabolical acts, especially since the murder of Louise had given him a certain pleasure. By 1940, World War II had begun, and France had fallen to the Nazi occupation. Petiot used the opportunity to exploit people, selling fake medical certificates to prevent them from being drafted, and supplying injured soldiers with drugs for a profit. He amassed a fortune until authorities fined him 2,400 francs. Petiot then reinvented himself as a revolutionary, leading a group claiming to resist the occupation. He boasted of having invented a secret weapon capable of killing German soldiers without leaving evidence, and claimed to have set traps and mines around France. During the occupation, he committed several murders and formed a criminal organization. When a Jewish man sought to escape the Nazis, Petiot promised to help him reach Argentina safely. He repeated this with many Jews, collecting large sums of money, gold, and valuables from them. He instructed them to deposit their possessions in his home for safekeeping, and convinced them to take a fake vaccine for supposed travel health requirements. Instead, he injected them with cyanide, killing them, operating under the alias Dr. Eugene. Petiot collaborated with 3 accomplices, luring and killing victims, including German soldiers and even fellow criminals, disposing of the bodies by throwing them into the Seine or dissolving them in quicklime. He bought a villa to carry out these gruesome acts, using quicklime and fire to dispose of the corpses. The Gestapo began to suspect him, but since they thought he was targeting Germans, they regarded him as a resistance hero. When his accomplices were captured, they only knew him as Dr. Eugene. But extensive investigations led the police to discover that Eugene was none other than Dr. Marcel Petiot. Despite intense searching, Petiot disappeared until resurfacing in March 1944. Resuming his crimes amidst the wartime chaos. Neighbors reported a foul odor from Petiot's villa, where the chimney was constantly burning. The police arrived and found burned remains, bones, and the belongings of the Jewish victims. The basement was full of dismembered bodies and death chambers. Petiot even had a room with a spyglass to watch his victims die from cyanide injections, enjoying their slow deaths. This behavior was reminiscent of his childhood cruelty to animals, revealing a deeply ingrained sadism. As news of his crimes spread across France and beyond, Petiot vanished again, hiding among friends and using various aliases. To avoid detection, he grew a beard and mustache, posing as a different person named Henri Vallier, a captain in the French internal forces responsible for anti-espionage. Ironically, he was tasked with hunting down none other than himself. After France's liberation, authorities focused on capturing the notorious Doctor of Death. They surveilled his family and eventually arrested him at a train station, carrying a valuable pistol and multiple identity documents. Marcel Petiot's trial on March 19, 1946, captivated the public. He often responded sarcastically during questioning and even fell asleep at one point. The court confronted him with evidence of 27 murders, though he boasted of killing over 60, justifying his actions by claiming they were enemies of France. Despite his persuasive rhetoric, the court sentenced him to death by guillotine, and thus ends the story of one of France's most notorious serial killers. Don't forget to follow our channel for more stories about criminals and killers from around the world. Thank you and see you next time.